Chapter 13. The Man in a Hurry. In the early evening time, Dr. Kemp was sitting in his study on the hill above Burdock. It was a pleasant little upstairs room, with 3 windows, north, west, and south, with bookshelves crowded with books, and with a broad writing table. Dr. Kemp was a tall, thin man of about 35, with fair hair. He was writing. His eye, soon wandering from his work, caught the sunset behind the hill opposite his house. For a minute, perhaps, he sat, pen in mouth, admiring the rich golden colour, and then he saw the little figure of a man running over the hill towards him. He was a shortish little man, in a dirty old hat, and he was running fast. Dr. Kemp got up, went to the window, and stared at the hillside and the dark little figure running down it. "He seems to be in a hurry," said Dr. Kemp to himself. Then the running man was hidden behind some houses. He came into sight and disappeared again, still running. But those who were nearer to him saw the terror in his face. He looked neither to the right nor left, but his wide eyes stared straight down the hill to where the lamps were being lit, and there were people crowding together in the street. Everybody he passed stopped and began staring up and down the road, and asking one another, half afraid, why the man was running so hard. And then, far up the hill, a dog playing in the road growled and ran under a gate, and something, a wind, a noise of feet, a sound like heavy breathing, rushed by. People cried out. People jumped off the footpath. They shouted as the thing rushed past them down the hill, and they were still shouting in the street before Marvel was halfway there. They were running into houses with the news and shutting the doors behind them. He heard it and ran even faster. Fear came hurrying by, rushed ahead of him, and in a moment had seized the town. The Invisible Man is coming. The Invisible Man. Chapter 14. In the Happy Cricketers. At the bottom of the hill was an inn called the Happy Cricketers. Inside, the barman leant his fat red arms on the table and talked about horses with a cabman, while a black-bearded man, who spoke like an American, talked to a policeman. "What's the shouting about?" said the cabman, trying to see up the hill over the dirty yellow curtains in the low window of the inn. Somebody ran past outside. "Fire, perhaps," said the barman. The door was pushed open, and Marvel, crying, his hat gone, the neck of his coat torn open, rushed in and tried to shut the door. It was held half open by a doorstop. "Coming!" he cried. The voice cracked with terror. "He's coming! The Invisible Man! After me! Help! Help! Help!" "Shut the doors," said the policeman. "Who's coming? What's the matter?" He went to the door and removed the doorstop, and the door shut with a bang. The man with the beard closed the other door. "Let me hide," said Marvel, with tears running down his face. "Let me hide. Lock me in somewhere. I tell you, he's after me. I escaped. He said he'd kill me, and he will." "You're safe," said the man with the black beard. "The door's shut. What's it all about?" "Oh, let me hide," said Marvel, and cried aloud as a blow suddenly made the locked door shake. The blow was followed by a hurried knocking and a shouting outside. "Hello!" cried the policeman. "Who's there?" "Oh, he'll kill me," shouted Mr. Marvel. "He's got a knife or something. Don't open the door. Please don't open the door. Where shall I hide?" "Is this the Invisible Man, then?" asked the black-bearded man, with one hand behind him. "I think it's about time we saw him." The window of the inn was suddenly broken in, and there were shouts and people running about in the street. The policeman had been standing on a chair, looking out of the window to see who was at the door. He got down. "That's who it is," he said. The barman stood in front of the parlour door, where Mr. Marvel was now locked in, and stared at the broken window. Then he came round to the two other men. Everything was suddenly quiet. "I wish I had my stick," said the policeman. "If we open the door, he'll come in. Nothing can stop him." "Don't be in too much of a hurry about that door," said the cabman anxiously. "Unlock it," said the man with the black beard. "And if he comes—" He showed them the revolver in his hand. "That won't do," said the policeman. "That's murder." "I know what country I'm in," said the man with the beard. "I'm going to shoot at his legs. Unlock it." "Not with that thing going off behind me," said the barman. "Very well," said the man with the black beard. He stepped forward with his gun ready and unlocked the door himself. Barman, cabman, and policeman turned around. "Come in," said the bearded man in a low voice, standing back and facing the door with his gun behind him. No one came in, and the door remained closed. "Are all the doors of the house shut?" asked Marvel 5 minutes later. "He's going round to the back." "There's the yard door," said the barman, "and the private door." "The yard door!" He rushed out of the bar. In a minute he appeared again with a long, sharp knife in his hand. "The yard door was open," he said. "He may be in the house now," said the cabman. The man with the beard put the gun back in his pocket. As he did so, the door opened. Something rushed past them, and the parlour door burst open. They heard Marvel cry out and ran to his rescue. The bearded man's revolver went off, and the mirror at the back of the parlour came crashing down on the floor. As the barman came into the room, he saw Marvel struggling against the door that led to the yard and kitchen. The door flew open, and Marvel was dragged into the kitchen. The policeman, who had been trying to pass the barman, rushed in, followed by the cabman, caught hold of the invisible hand that held Marvel, was hit in the face and fell down. Then the cabman took hold of something. "I've got him," said the cabman. "Here he is," said the barman. Mr. Marvel suddenly dropped to the ground and made an attempt to hide behind the legs of the fighting men. The struggle went backwards and forwards near the door. The voice of the invisible man was heard for the first time, as the policeman stepped on his foot. Then he cried out, and his arms flew out. The cabman was suddenly knocked to the ground by a kick in the stomach. The door into the bar parlour from the kitchen shut with a bang as Mr. Marvel escaped through it. The men in the kitchen found themselves struggling with empty air. "Where's he gone?" cried the man with the beard. "Out?" "This way," said the policeman, stepping into the yard and stopping. A large stone flew by his head and fell on the kitchen table. "I'll show him," shouted the man with the black beard, and he fired 5 rapid shots in the direction the stone had come from. As he fired, the man with the beard moved his hand slightly, so that his shots went from one side to the other of the narrow yard. A silence followed. "Come along," he said, "and feel around for his body." Chapter 15. Dr. Kemp's Visitor. Dr. Kemp was writing in his study when he heard the shots. Crack, 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 they came, one after the other. "Hello," said Dr. Kemp to himself, putting his pen into his mouth again and listening. "Who's letting off guns in Burdock? What are they doing now?" He went to the south window, threw it up, and, leaning out, stared down on the town. "It looks like a crowd down by the Happy Cricketers," he said to himself. Then his eyes wandered over the town to far away where the ship's lights shone. The moon in its first quarter hung over the hill to the west, and the stars were clear and bright. 5 minutes later, Dr. Kemp pulled down the window again and returned to his writing desk. It must have been about an hour after this that the front door bell rang. He sat listening. He heard the servant go to the door and waited for the sound of her feet on the staircase, but she did not come. What was that about? Dr. Kemp asked himself. He tried to go on with his work, failed, and went downstairs. He rang the bell and called to the servant as she appeared in the hall. Was that a letter? He asked. Only the bell ringing, sir, and no one there, she answered. I'm restless tonight, he said to himself. He went back to his study. Soon afterwards, he was hard at work again, and his room was silent except for the sounds of the clock and his pen moving over the paper. It was 2 o'clock before he had finished his work for the night. He rose and went upstairs to bed. When he had taken off his coat and shirt, he felt thirsty. He took a lamp and went down to the dining room in search of a drink. Dr. Kemp's scientific work had trained him to notice things quickly. As he crossed the hall, he saw a dark spot on the floor near the stairs. He went on upstairs, and then he asked himself what the dark spot on the floor might be. He went back to the hall and, bending down, touched the spot. It looked and felt like drying blood. He returned upstairs, looking around him and thinking about the blood spot. Then, suddenly, he saw something which made him stop. There was blood on the handle of his door. He looked at his own hand. It was quite clean. Then he remembered that the door of his room had been open when he came down from his study, and that he had not touched the handle at all. He went straight into his bedroom, his face quite calm, perhaps a little more determined than usual. He looked at the bed. There was a pool of blood, and the sheet was torn. He had not noticed this when he had been lying in the room before. The other side of the bed looked as if someone had been lying on it. Then he seemed to hear a low voice say, "Help me, Kemp." But Dr. Kemp did not believe in voices. He stood staring at the sheets. Was it really a voice? He looked around him again and noticed nothing, but he clearly heard something move across the room. A strange feeling came over him. He closed the door of the room and came forward. Suddenly, with a shock, he saw a bloody bandage hanging in the air between him and the bed. He stared at it in surprise. It was an empty bandage. A bandage properly tied, but quite empty. He would have moved forward to take hold of it, but a touch stopped him, and a voice spoke quite close to him. "Kemp," said the voice. "Eh?" said Kemp, with his mouth open. Said the voice, "I'm an invisible man." Kemp made no answer for a moment or two, but simply stared at the bandage. "The invisible man?" he said at last. "I'm an invisible man," repeated the voice. "I thought it was a lie," he said. "Have you got a bandage on?" he asked. "Yes," said the invisible man. "Oh," said Kemp, and then, "I say, but this is nonsense. It's some trick." He stepped forward suddenly, stretched out his hand towards the bandage, and met invisible fingers. "Keep steady, Kemp, in God's name. I want help badly. Stop." The hand seized his arm. He struck at it. "Kemp!" cried the voice. "Kemp, keep still." A desire to free himself took hold of Kemp, but the hand held his shoulder, and he was suddenly pushed and fell backwards upon the bed. He opened his mouth to shout, and the corner of the sheet was pushed between his teeth. The invisible man held him down, but his arms were free, and he hit back fiercely. "Listen to reason, will you?" said the invisible man. "By heaven, you'll make me mad! Stop struggling and lie still! Lie still!" Kemp struggled for another moment and then lay still. "Let me get up," he said. "I'll stay where I am. and let me sit quiet for a minute." He sat up and felt his neck. "I'm just an ordinary man. A man you used to know, made invisible. Do you remember Griffin?" "Griffin?" repeated Kemp. "Griffin," answered the voice. "A younger student than you." "What has this to do with Griffin?" "I am Griffin." Kemp laughed. "It's too much of a shock," he said. "But what devil's work can make a man invisible?" "It's no devil's work. It's honest and simple enough." "It's terrible," said Kemp. "How on earth—" "I'm wounded and in pain and tired. Great God! Kemp, you are a man. Keep calm. Give me some food and drink, and let me sit down here." Kemp stared at the bandage as it moved across the room, then saw a chair slide along the floor and come to rest near the bed. It made a noise, and the seat sank slightly. He rubbed his eyes and felt his neck again. "This beats magic," he said, and laughed stupidly. "That's better. Thank heaven you're becoming sensible." "Or silly," said Kemp, and rubbed his eyes again. "Give me something to drink. I'm nearly dead." "It didn't feel like that. Where are you? If I get up, shall I run into you? There. All right. A drink. Here. Where shall I give it you?" Kemp felt the glass taken out of his hand. He let it go into the air. It came to rest just in front of the chair seat. He stared at it. I don't believe it. I must be mad." "Nonsense," said the voice. "Listen to me. I'm hungry, and the night is cold to be a man with no clothes on." "Food?" offered Kemp. The glass emptied itself. "Yes," said the invisible man, putting it down. "Can you give me something to wear?" Kemp found some clothes. "These?" he asked. They were taken from him. They hung in the air, buttoned themselves, and sat down in the chair. "Oh, the maddest thing I've ever seen in my life," said Kemp. "Some food." Kemp went to the kitchen for some bread and some meat, returned, and put them on a table in front of his guest. "Never mind about a knife," said the invisible man, and a piece of meat hung in the air and disappeared with the sound of eating. "I always like to have clothes on when I eat," said the voice. "Is your arm all right?" "Not very painful." "It's all mad as can be." "Quite reasonable," said the invisible man. "But how's it done?" began Kemp. "What were the shots?" he asked. "How did the shooting begin?" "There was a man. I tried to make him help me, who tried to steal my money. And he has stolen it." "Is he invisible too?" "No." "Well, can't I have some more to eat before I tell you all about it? I'm hungry, in pain." "And you want me to tell stories?" Kemp got up. "You didn't do any shooting?" he asked. "Not me," said his visitor. "Some fool fired. A man I'd never seen before. A lot of them got frightened. They all got frightened of me. I say, I want more to eat than this, Kemp." "I'll see whether there's anything more to eat downstairs," said Kemp. "Not much, I'm afraid." Kemp found some more food, and when his guest had eaten, he told him to try to get some sleep. Though the invisible man was wounded and tired, he refused to accept Kemp's word that no one would try to seize him. He examined the 2 windows of the bedroom, pulled up the blinds and opened the windows to see whether it was possible to get out that way, as Kemp had told him. Outside the night was very quiet and still, and the new moon was setting over the hill. Then he examined the key of the bedroom door. At last he was satisfied. He stood by the fireside, and Kemp heard his breathing relax. "I'm sorry," said the invisible man, "if I cannot tell you all that I've done tonight, but I'm so tired." It's foolish, no doubt. It's horrible. But believe me, Kemp, in spite of your arguments, it's quite a possible thing. I've made a discovery. I intended to keep it secret. I can't. I must have someone to help me. And you. We can do such great things together. But tomorrow. Now, Kemp, I feel as though I must sleep or die. They said good-night to each other, and Kemp stayed in his room, thinking. He picked up a newspaper and found that it was full of reports of the Invisible Man. As he read, he began to feel afraid of what his guest might do if he was allowed to stay free. He wrote a note and addressed it to Colonel Adie, Port Burdock.